less than 10 minutes away from Finn's office to meet with all his folks. Looking forward to it. And here's downtown Buffalo. Hope you enjoy the interviews. And looking forward to speaking to a lot of people. Thank you, Sarah, for letting me interview you. I'm actually at your office, Cypress North in Buffalo. I just arrived here, and Greg Finn said you're the first stop. So what I'm going to be doing is interviewing a bunch of like search marketers in this area in Buffalo, and you're the first. Could you please tell people in that camera who you are?
Sarah Burke, and I'm the Data and Analytics Manager here at Cypress North.
Cool. And before you started your job here with Cypress North, you started at another company called LocalEdge, you told me.
Yep, so they're a local company, and I started in SEO there, so I was only doing SEO. They kind of had all different departments for SEM, SEO, web design, social media. So I just did that there, and then I was kind of ready to learn more about digital marketing. And when I started here, I learned paid search, social, kind of all aspects of what was going on in an account.
And then Greg Finn poached you? How'd that work? Or we can't talk about that.
I was looking.
So I applied for a project manager job, I think, technically, but then I was hired as a digital marketer.
Cool. And you switched from SEO to more paid when you jumped over here?
I did learn paid here, but I was kind of doing a little bit of everything, which was what I was looking for out of LocalEdge. So I wanted to kind of learn more stuff outside of SEO. So I did learn paid search here. And then I learned social ads, analytics, reporting, all sorts of stuff.
Okay, so so you were pretty much focused on the SEO side at the LocalEdge company.
Mm-hmm.
What was like this? What are some of the strategies you had to deploy at those companies that you could talk about? Some probably you can't, but
yeah, it was a lot of. I mean, this was back in 2013, 14-ish. So we're coming out of like the dark SEO days of like keyword stuffing and all of that. But it was still very kind of like do the title tags in month 1 and then do the meta descriptions in month 2 and then do internal linking in month 3. So it wasn't very much like a holistic strategy. It was like making sure you touch the site every month and implementing one strategy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So you had your basically
a little old school.
Your checklist, do this, do this, do this, do this.
Exactly.
Interesting. And that was the 2013 times was just after Panda, around Penguin.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really about doing content-based SEO, internal linking.
Yes.
That was somewhat safe.
Once we got all those kind of initial strategies done, then we'd be in like write one blog a month and keep the content going.
And then you said it was too easy. I need to find a challenge. And then you called up Greg Finn and said, I'm ready for the hard stuff.
Pretty much. Yeah. I didn't have any visibility into what else was going on an account. So SEM was a totally different department and web design was a totally different department. And I kind of wanted to get the full picture on what was going on with an account. And
when you started here, you first started to do some paid social. How did it work?
I think I was just helping out on the accounts that Jess and Greg had. So those were the only two marketers here when I started. So I was doing like site plans. So I was still doing SEO stuff. So that's where we'd lay out like all the pages on the site, keyword focus, title tags, meta description. So there's still some of that. And then I must have just been helping Greg out on his paid account. So I definitely started with Google ads and at the time Bing ads, now Microsoft ads, and then probably got into some social stuff. So I think it went something like that.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many names. I mean, early days it was like MSN ads as well. So yeah, those are the good old days of search marketing. And then eventually you started to go into this, I guess, data analytics role. What made you decide, hey, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, so I was the digital marketer here for a few years, and then I was a digital marketing manager. So at that point, I was kind of running my own accounts, being the point of contact with the client, coming up with the strategies each month or however often we would talk. And so I kind of had more freedom to come up with ideas, and then I was responsible for the results. So I got more into like digging into analytics and seeing if my strategies were working and going through those reports with the client. And I kind of just found my main interest in that area. I loved kind of digging into stuff, finding out why things weren't working, like really getting in there. So I started to focus on that more. And then I found a grad school program locally in data science. So I did that for 2 years and then moved into this position.
Interesting. So it's interesting how like analytics has evolved over the years. Back in the old days, it was like 1990s when it was just basically printing out log files.
Mhm.
Have you ever done that? Like looked at HT log files?
I've looked at them, yeah.
And then like taking a highlighter and like highlighting
Never
where the
printed
referral
them.
was. I remember going to clients' offices and like printing them out and then highlighting like what was the important like referral. Like
That
you're
is
getting
wild.
traffic from Alta Vista or you're getting traffic from Excite. That was like the old days. And then Urchin came out, and that product was great. It would first initially process your log files.
Okay.
And then when Urchin was acquired by Google, forming Google Analytics, they stopped processing. Well, they kept Urchin like a enterprise version, which processed log files. And then they gave the free version to be basically put a snippet of code on your website to
Mhm.
track you. And that's what we know as universal analytics.
And that's pretty much where my career started, was
Yeah.
in that realm. So I didn't know all that history.
Right. And
Mhm.
we're like, oh, back then it was interesting looking at what's changing now versus what's changing then. And we're like, how could analytics not look at log files? Why are we just putting a snippet there? What if somebody blocks that JavaScript and we're not
Mhm.
looking at that snippet of code? And we're all upset back then. And now we're in this new phase where Google Analytics 4 is like totally analyzing, user data and what they're doing on your website, completely different from what the original, I guess, Universal 3 was doing. It's
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
So does the panic sound familiar to you?
But back then, SEOs were not really, or search marketers were not really that concerned about analytics.
Mhm.
And I kind of feel like most aren't still today, unless you're a real professional. Most are just like, I have my job. I'm doing, like you said, title tags,
Mhm.
meta descriptions. I'm, spending X amount of dollars per month on your campaigns. Does it convert? Well, does the Google Ads conversion tracking show it does it convert? They're not really looking at it in such a deep level,
Right.
but the more professional ones there definitely are.
Interesting.
And I think at this point, search marketers just complain about everything. So this is the future. Like I think you said on your marketing talk,
Mhm. Yes.
marketing talk
Yeah.
thing is basically they were kind of forced to do this early because of GDPR and all these privacy things. So I felt that was pretty, dead on.
Mhm.
It's a shame that they couldn't have held off or expedited whatever they're doing to improve Google Analytics
Right.
4 beforehand. But also a lot of SEOs and search marketers don't understand you can't just import universal analytics data into Google Analytics 4 because
It's not the same.
it's not the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe you could do something to like say a user is the same on this level and somehow, but I don't see how.
All I'm just asking for is like some sort of connector to, I guess I could use the Google Analytics add-on for Sheets, something to import it somewhere.
Right.
So we're not just exporting all these Excel file reports.
So I think there's some like Fathom Analytics and some other ones that are promising like a Google Analytics.
Yes, if you use their tool, which I think is kind of genius.
Yeah. So it's a
But-
good marketing ploy, and I think a lot of people will do it.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't you have multiple tracking units on your site?
Mhm.
People are concerned about slowing down the website. There's too much tracking, but I don't think having 2 or 3 is going to really make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. We do have time. I have my tabs. So I have my UA3, my GA4 tabs and stuff like that.
That's pretty much what mine looks like now too. I'm trying to, every time I want to go into UA, I'm making myself go into GA4.
Yeah, so this way you know what the difference is. I guess we could discuss that. I mean, we're kind of in that GA4 topic now.
Mhm.
There's obviously you want to discuss the benefits and some of the features there, but in terms of the data differences, I often look at it and the real-time data is usually through the roof compared to universal analytics, but the user per day data is usually a lot lower
Mhm.
than on the new GA4 versus UA3.
Yeah.
What's the reason for that?
So the real-time thing, the real-time view only, I'm sure you've noticed this, but it only captures the last 30 minutes. So you're not getting that single real-time, which I used for testing a lot, which I know wasn't 100%, but what I would just see if an event fires or something like that. But they do have a nice new debug view kind of in place of that, which I like a lot better. So yeah, that's a little different. And then there's differences in the way that the sessions are counting. So the sessions are more accurate in GA4 in the sense that they don't, like for example, they don't time out when a new day starts. In UA they would. So if you're on a website like at midnight, it'll start a new session, and then in GA4 it's still following you. So that's why your numbers might be lower. So it's better at tracking the user.
That's interesting because usually also the GA4 next day won't happen until much later next day. Does that make sense? So you go there, you load GA4 in the morning, and the user graph, is showing X,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go there. I know, instead of going at 9 o'clock in the morning, you go there at like noon. The user data for the previous day, because it only shows the previous day by default, right? Yeah, shows the previous day first, is usually half of what it would be. Seems like they're catching up. I don't know if I'm crazy or you've seen that too.
No, I've been seeing a lot of differences in the number changes. So one thing, I was looking at sessions by channel, I believe. I'm trying to remember. I think I was just looking for total sessions and then like organic sessions, like something very simple in GA4. I looked in 3 different places and I saw 3 different numbers.
Uh-huh.
So I was chatting with support because I was wondering like what's going on here, like which one should I be looking at? And their answer didn't make total sense to me. They said it has to do with the different, if I'm saying this right, cardinality between the different reports. So there's basically something like if you're looking at a channel breakdown, for example, you might see a grouping of it in parentheses other, where if there's too many of them, there's like this max on like how many rows there can be essentially. It'll group all the extras into this other, but the channels that are reporting are supposed to be accurate. So I guess all these different reports have a different max essentially. So they're reporting different. And I didn't dive into it enough to nail down exactly like what's going on and which one might be the most accurate. But then another difference that I've been seeing is I recorded the session numbers for January and February totals. So this was days after the months were over. And I looked back recently and they're different totals now. So I don't know why. I don't even know if the support person knows why, but it's something I got to explore.
Can you imagine that, sending a report to your client?
Exactly.
And then 2 weeks later, the client's like, well, it's wrong. Why are you sending me wrong information?
Exactly. So I'm hoping they either fix it if it's an issue or get better documentation explaining all these differences.
That's going to be wrong. I remember when Google Search Console just revamped and they had very little documentation. Everybody was like, how do these metrics work?
Yep.
And everybody was interpreting it completely differently.
Yep.
Same thing with Google Analytics 3, I guess, Universal Analytics. I never called it Universal Analytics until GA4 came out, so that's kind of annoying.
I think me too. Yeah.
Anyway, so when Universal Analytics 3 initially came out, the same thing. It was like the document. People were like, "Why doesn't this match what, Google Ads shows versus what Google Search Console shows versus what GA4 shows versus whatever?" And people used to have their hit counters on their websites and be like, "Why doesn't it match my hit counter?" One of those old-fashioned hit counters.
Mm-hmm.
I broke 1 million hits. So anyway, let's go more into GA4. I know you have, talk a little bit about the benefits